Yes, sir. Guys, there's just nothing more fun than a grass bite. Golly, that one's so thick. That's what I love about these grass fish. I mean, so thick, so healthy. About a 2.5 pounder. Let's keep on going. Hey guys, Tyler Burry here with Bass Fishing HQ, and today I want to talk about grass. Grass is one of the best places in any lake that you can go and catch a bass. But the thing about grass and weeds is that it can be extremely difficult to navigate for an angler. Sometimes you have grass that's growing in literally inches of water, and it'll grow all the way out to 12, 13, 14 foot. That's exactly what we have here at this lake that I'm fishing today. I have grass mats up in front of me that is literally grass floating on the top of the surface, and I also have grass that grows out to 14 foot. So how exactly do you navigate that as an angler? Today I want to give you 5 tips that I think will drastically help improve your grass fishing. So stay tuned, it's going to be a good one. Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was a lot of fun right there. It's about a 3-pound fish right there. Flipping in the milfoil, guys. This is one of the best ways to catch summertime bass. Tip number 1 when it comes to fishing grass, and I'm gonna say go to the extremes when it comes to fishing grass. You know, like I talked about earlier, grass can grow in extremely shallow water and all the way out to deep. So my favorite thing to do when I get to a lake is go to the extreme ends of that spectrum in order to catch fish. So as you can see here, I'm actually fishing mats right now that are actually right up against the bank, right? They are the shallowest part of the grass that I can possibly get to. It gives the bass a little bit of an edge. It gives them something to hang around. It gives them a stopping point where they can't go any further. So a lot of times bass are gonna be right on the shallowest part. Those fish will be right up, tucked against the shore in that mat. Now the other place is the extreme opposite end. Go to where you have the biggest grass line. If you idle out in your boat and you see a hard grass line where that line just stops and all of a sudden you have bare bottom, that is another great place to catch a bass, is on that deep outside grass line. I actually caught 2 really nice fish fishing that way earlier today. I was graphing around, found some good edges, and that is where I caught some nice fish. So when it comes to grass fishing, go to the extreme ends. Can you find bass in the middle in that 6 to 7 foot? Absolutely, but they can be extremely difficult to find. So if you're first starting to grass fish, go to the extreme ends. Go shallow and go deep where that grass stops. Tip number 2 when it comes to fishing grass is you have to understand that shade still matters. I think a lot of guys, just because they're fishing a mat, think that the bass can be anywhere. And although that is true, guys, it's still going to be darker. It's still going to be a little bit more ideal for a bass to be in the shade. If you look up just ahead of me, you have a grass mat, and that mat actually goes underneath that dock. Now, a high percentage area where that bass might be caught is right in that shade line, right where that shade is. Shade still matters when you're fishing around grass, and it's actually what I'm targeting right here. Yes, the fish are in the grass, but I'm actually targeting the shade itself. Just a minute ago, I skipped up underneath one of these docks into some shade, and that's where I got bit. It wasn't a great big fish, but that fish was holding in the shade. Although it was still in the grass, shade still matters. All right, guys, tip number 3 when it comes to fishing grass is keep lure selection simple until you find the bass. One of the things that I see a lot of anglers struggle with is, and this is actually something that a lot of anglers struggle with in general, is that they just keep switching lures when they're out there fishing. They never just settle down. They keep thinking that a magical lure change is going to be the best bet for them, when 9 times out of 10, they just need to get around the fish themselves. They haven't been around them. They think that if they keep changing their lures, they're gonna find that magical lure. Guys, I really like to keep my lure selection extremely simple when I'm looking for bass in grass. And really there's three main lures that I'm going to use, okay? The first one is a frog. A frog is simply one of the best lures to fish around grass. It comes through grass extremely well. You can cover a lot of water. You know, you can fish on matted vegetation. Another thing you can do is use like a horny toad style frog, you know, and that is also going to allow you to cover a lot of water in that 1 to 4 foot zone with a horny toad. One of the other baits I really like in grass is a chatterbait. Guys, a chatterbait is probably one of my #1 go-to lures to use in grass. The biggest reason is that it just comes through grass really, really well. That blade really helps kind of prevent any grass from really hanging up on your lure. Sure, it's going to get hung from time to time, but a chatterbait comes through grass very, very well. And a chatterbait has a great drawing power. You know, fish that are within 5, 6 foot of that chatterbait can feel that chatterbait coming through the water, and they're gonna come up there and eat that chatterbait. Oh, God. Okay. All right, guys, the third lure is what I just caught this little dink on, and that's a Texas rig, guys. A Texas rig is probably the #1 lure when it comes to fishing grass. You can fish it very shallow and you can fish it extremely deep. That fish was actually sitting in 10 foot of water down there in some grass. What I have here is a Texas rig tube, and I have it on a 1/2 ounce weight. That is one of the best setups that I really like to use whenever I'm trying to find bass in the grass, is a 1/2 ounce weight in a Texas rig tube. That tube comes through the water so well, and it also gets really, really big bites. Now, once I start catching fish, I might switch it up. You know, I might switch it up to a jig and try to get a little bit bigger bites, but a Texas rig is a great bait to throw in the grass. All right, guys, tip #4 when it comes to fishing grass, and this is kind of a big one, and it's really easy to miss this one, is pay attention to how the bass are relating to the grass. To me, there's 3 ways that bass are typically relating to the grass, okay? One is they're gonna be at the very base of the grass, okay? This is what I find most of the time. You might be fishing in 7, 8, 10, 12 foot of water, but those bass are still at the base of the grass. A lot of times as grass grows, it'll actually canopy. So the grass will canopy, and below that you'll have shade, you'll have caves, you'll have caverns for the bass to actually get in, and typically they're going to relate to the very bottom of the grass, okay? And that's when I'm typically using that Texas rig to catch those fish. If they're relating to the bottom of that grass, I'm gonna pitch that Texas rig in, work it at the bottom. Now, the other way that a lot of times you'll see bass relating to the grass is they're actually going to suspend in the grass. A lot of times you don't really know if the bass are suspended in grass until you start catching some fish in the grass. And what happens a lot of times is you just kind of realize that that bait stopped before it really should have. For instance, you know, I'm fishing a lot of 8 and 10 foot of water today. I'm kind of starting to get a feel of how long that bait actually drops before it hits the bottom. Now, I have been on lakes before where all of a sudden it's just like it stops too soon, and you realize that that fish was actually suspended. It may have only been 4 foot down, although you're fishing in 8 foot of water. And that's what I'm talking about, is sometimes those fish are suspended. So in that case, sometimes the Texas rig is still one of the best baits to use, but a lot of times what I'll do is I'll switch over to a bait like a chatterbait or a jerkbait, something that's going to be in the same column as where those fish are, and hopefully that'll help me get more bites. All right, guys, the third way that bass are going to relate to grass is they're actually going to be on top of the grass itself. I saw this once in Florida where I was actually fishing hydrilla that was in 10 foot of water, and it came up to 2 foot on top, and those fish were on top, schooling on top of that grass. So a lot of times you'll be able to visibly see these fish, or maybe you'll cast up like a Texas rig and you'll actually get bit really high in the water column. That's how you know those fish might be relating to the top. And in that case, a lot of times I'm gonna start using some sort of top water bait or maybe a fluke to keep it really high in the water column and get those fish that are really high in the water column relating to that grass. The 5th tip when it comes to fishing grass, and this is extremely important, when you start catching a fish, stay in that area. Fish group up in grass in very tight little clusters. I mean, you might be fishing a giant grass bed, but there might be just one little corner, and that's where all the fish are. So as soon as you start catching fish, literally put the brakes on, stop what you're doing, and fish that area extremely thorough. A lot of times you're gonna be shocked when you find a giant school of bass in a very, very small little area. So put the brakes on when you catch a fish, because a lot of times there can be multiple fish in that area. A lot of times they're just relating to something like a rock or a hard bottom that's inside the grass, whatever it may be, guys. When you get bit, make sure that you stop and fish that area. Guys, as a bonus tip, I have made a very thorough, complete guide on grass fishing that I'm gonna link in the description and above here. So click on that if you guys wanna check out more about grass. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, comment below, and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.